One of the most common behavioural biases that human beings are prone to is called availability bias. It's basically a mental shortcut, which means that when we're making a decision about something, we give greater prominence than we should to the first thing that comes to mind. If you like, it's a type of memory bias, and it's very powerful.
There's a wonderful quote in Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. So Daniel Kahneman is the father of behavioural economics. He won the Nobel Prize for it in 2002. In his book, he has this quote, which is, "Nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you're thinking about it." The mere fact that we've got something in our heads at a moment in time means that we are placing too much weight on that in our decisions.
So, from an investing point of view, how exactly does availability bias affect our decision making?
Availability bias messes up our internal cost-benefit analyses because it bases our estimations of probability of certain outcomes on the things we remember. But the things that we remember are not based on good probabilities to begin with. The things that are the most improbable, the least likely to happen, are the things that we remember because they're shocking, or because they get news, or because we talk about them the most.
There are different types of availability bias, but one of the most important is called salience.
Salience is when something absolutely dramatic happens and it really sticks in the mind. And sometimes these things are multi-generational. So for instance, the Wall Street crash. I mean, every time we have a market downturn, the papers are full about how it's the next Wall Street crash. It never is, but it really does live in the memory. Almost the saddest ones I ever heard of was in the wake of 9/11. So, all those people died, but another 1,500 people died in the wake of 9/11 because instead of flying, they got in their cars.
Another example of availability or memory bias is recency. This is the tendency to give greater weight to recent information than the long-term evidence warrants.
So if I were to ask you, what's the likelihood of seeing a red car the next time you go out on the street, your mind may immediately go to the last time you saw cars. And then you would scan that memory to think of how many of them were red. In an event where you don't have all the information you might need to create a probability in your mind, you will go to maybe the last time you were in that circumstance and use that as your basis of estimation. It's perfectly reasonable to do. The fact is that it just doesn't help us when it comes to investment, because what's happened most recently doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen in the future. So recency bias has us creating probabilities based on what's recent.
So that, in a nutshell, is recency bias. But what can investors do to combat it?
The only solution I know to that problem is just to extend your view of recent past. And right now, with Twitter age, right, recent past is often like 3 minutes. Like, could we just extend our view of the recent past and consider, right? Oh, remember just 5 years ago, that happened. I think it causes problems for a lot of people, and it's actually not that easy to solve, but that's the solution, is to try to extend your view of the recent past.
Remember as well that you shouldn't pay too much attention to the financial media, especially when the markets are in turmoil.
I was once asked to do an interview for Bloomberg just after the financial crisis, and the interviewers were pressing me and they said, well, this long-term thing is all very well, but do you have any advice for people who are in the market now and are stressed right now and need to do something about it? And to my eternal shame, I said the first thing that popped into my head, which was, well, yes, they could turn off Bloomberg for a start. I didn't get invited back for a very long time.
In short, the way to overcome availability bias is to look at the bigger picture, to tune out the noise and focus on the long term.